Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Naturally, I'm glad that we finally left the European Union in all its manifestations, which I always believed was an unnatural birth for a United Kingdom that was outward-looking and sovereign. But Brexit is not a panacea in itself. What Brexit does is it brings choices and options and freedoms that wouldn't otherwise be there. To make it succeed, we have to have vision for our future, we have to have courage in policy, and we have to have boldness in execution. And that means that government structures must be reorientated towards the task, funding not only those institutions that we need inside the United Kingdom to make it succeed, but our elements abroad as well, something the Treasury will need to come to terms with. Now, if I may, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to say two things about trade. First of all, obviously, it allows us to have an independent trade policy, but that comes with one major drawback. You actually have to have more exporters to make it worthwhile, because unless we have more goods and services to sell, i.e. unless we have more trade, a free trade agreement is little more than another piece of paper, which is why I welcome the Department's push for an updated and extended transport strategy. The second thing it allows us to do is to deal with some of those global trade issues. Now, global trade was shrinking before we got to the COVID crisis, not least because of the number of non-tariff barriers being loaded into the global economy by the world's richest countries. We are making it more and more difficult for some of the world's poorest countries to access our markets. And if we keep continuing on this trend, then our aid budget will become little more than conscience money while we stop people being able to trade their way sustainably out of poverty. We need to take a strong look at our own behaviour and what we are doing in terms of putting up barriers to some of the world's poorest nations. And when it's wonderful that we're talking about reducing tariffs for some of the world's poorest countries, but we need to take a good look at the non-tariff barriers which are making it so difficult for them to enter our markets. And this is a problem that's being made worse at the present time by the export restrictions being put on medicines and medical products, which need to be reduced, otherwise they will accentuate the problems that we're facing with COVID. We've got a WTO that's on the edge of collapse, frankly, and this brings me to the final point I want to make about the institutions where Britain can play a bigger role. The multilateral institutions, the UN, the Security Council, OECD, IMF, UNCTAD, all designed for the second half of the 20th century, which need to be brought up to date for the challenges of the 21st, and where those who have shown the way in the United Kingdom, both in politics and the civil service, can give a lead. But our other partnerships too, in NATO, where our European partners must learn to step up to the plate on spending. The Five Eyes community, far more than just a security potential for us. The Commonwealth, a third of the global population, most of whom are under the age of 30, who share many of our political institutions and our legal system. Tremendous opportunities for the UK. We can choose to shape the global system around us or be shaped by it. I know what I want for my country.